Hello, everyone, and welcome to the summer version of the Fireside Chat. And instead of being by the fireside, I am in my backyard here at Fairhaven Farm. And it's an exciting day because blueberry season officially opened today. And Brennan, it was great that you were here today.
The first one there.
First one there, a lover of blueberries. And just so you know, the farm is run by senior Frankie Brandt. So come on down. But we're delighted to be with you tonight and hopefully to share more information about the reopening of school. This is really designed to be an update, and it's where the reopening planning team has gotten to this moment. And I hope that one of the outcomes is that we share information, but that the other is that through questions that you put in the chat, that you help us to be aware of other details and bits of information that we need to be aware of, and we'll feed that right to the planning team, and we'll work on getting answers to those questions over time. We'll take questions at the very end of this program and answer the ones we can answer now and save the rest for our future planning. We're really going to get into a next level of detail in the coming weeks. So, you know, it's amazing to think that the pandemic hit Derryfield only 4 months ago. And in many ways, it feels like such a long time. And we're definitely learning more and more about the virus and learning how to live with the virus. However, as we see in other states, conditions can change pretty rapidly. And so please sort of take what we predict tonight with a grain of salt, understanding that this is a situation of uncertainty and the plan as we know it today may change over time. We will be sending a letter that conveys the content that we talk about tonight to all parents and students on Monday. And in the parent version of that letter, there's going to be a link to a survey, and it will be asking you whether you would like your child to be on campus or taking Derryfield courses virtually in the fall. And we ask that you please respond to that by July 31st so we can get going on our planning. So we are extremely, extremely fortunate at Derryfield to have a number of advantages that really put Derryfield in a better position to open this fall than most private or public or independent schools. And there are a number of advantages. One of those advantages is that we're being advised by public health official experts who have great knowledge of epidemiology and great experience in operating military bases through other kinds of disease outbreaks and pandemics. And their advice has been incredibly helpful, and they've advised that Derryfield's entire student body can be on campus this fall. And the reasons that we are able to do that speak to a number of our advantages. First, we have a small student body, and it's made up of kids who are mission appropriate, and that means that they're bright and they're motivated, and they're also well behaved. They're kids who are used to experiencing a high level of adult trust in them and their behavior on campus, no hall passes at Derryfield, and they're practiced in community-oriented behavior. We also have just a much lower density of people on our campus compared to other schools. We also have the Lead for the Common Good program, which is all about social emotional learning and self-discipline and learning and leading in community. And I can think of no better matched program than our situation this coming year than Leading for the Common Good. We have so much indoor square footage. We have the new 44,000 square foot Athletic and Wellness Center. We have the Science and Innovation Center and so much other space. We also have a remarkably sized campus with over 84 acres of land. Our students and our faculty and our staff take private cars to work or to school, or they take Derryfield buses rather than public transportation. That's definitely an element that's going to make it very difficult for example, New York City independent schools to open. And families choose Derryfield because of the community. And so we have a very high confidence in our parents' willingness to share the responsibility for community health. We also have a great off-campus option. Sometimes in the past, kids have been sick and tried to come to school because they were so worried about falling behind. But where our virtual learning option is going to be in play and so positive, kids won't have that anxiety. And so symptomatic students will be able to stay at home completely worry-free. And then finally, the cases in New Hampshire are going in the right direction. And our population is only 1.3 million people, but we have a state the size of a European country. So we are really positioned very well for all of those reasons to be all on campus together. This is going to be one really remarkable year. Our experts are advising us that herd immunity or vaccines are unlikely to impact this school year. So we're planning that what we're planning for the fall is what we will be planning through the entire year. Right now, the virus isn't any different than it was in the spring. And I think Lindley told me she had heard from a health official, people are smart, the virus is patient. Well, at Derryfield, we will be patient too. And we're going to embrace this year with gratitude that we're so fortunate to be able to be back on campus and back in community. We're also going to be grateful that the standards by which we live on campus will be higher than what the governor set out this week. So our faculty and staff are really good at being realistic and facing difficulties and facing problems. And it's also true that my wonderful colleagues do so with a terrific sense of humor and a can-do spirit. And we will continue in that way this fall, that we are going to solve and we're going to adapt and we're going to find great joy and we're going to laugh for sure. And we expect that though these are unusual times and we will find unusual ways of doing things and ways of being, but we will find humor and joy and connection and great, great learning through all of it. So one thing that we've been talking about as a faculty and staff is expect to be inconvenienced and delighted when you are not. And that is definitely holds true for students and families. Some kind of neat upsides that we'll be looking forward to is that we're going to spend far more time outdoors than usual because the virus is much less virulent outdoors, and kids will have more breaks and more recess than last year, more outdoor activities and more adult supervision, and hopefully that means more adult connection and more opportunities for friendships amongst all of us doing things outside. So things will be different, but some things will bring us closer, and certainly it will draw out our creativity. So I want to talk for a moment about the steps we're taking specifically to help keep our colleagues and our students safe. So first, as I talked about, we're going to have this overarching kind of view that we all together are sharing responsibility, and that shared responsibility for the health of the community will be everyone's effort. And I hope we can look at this as a one-year commitment, sort of a covenant of sorts, an agreement that out of a sense of care for each other and a shared desire to stay on campus, we will follow health guidelines. So some of those guidelines are that when we wake up in the morning, parents will ask their children screening questions, take their temperature, and enter that data in our Magnus healthcare system, which has a Magnus app, which we'll teach you about in the future. Faculty and staff will be doing that as well. And what this will accomplish is it will keep symptomatic people off campus. Then we'll take the following steps that I'm going to describe to protect colleagues and students from asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic people. So masks will be worn inside at all times. Masks will be worn outside unless folks are taking a mask break and are far apart. Hand washing and sanitizing will be built into kids' daily routines at school. The classrooms will be reworked so that every classroom gets a HEPA air purifier freestanding machine. And also every classroom's HVAC system gets a top level air filter, which has been recommended by our experts. It's sort of, as the cliche goes, a belt and suspender approach, because they do the same thing, but we're going to be very careful. Furniture will be set up so that it is 6 feet apart, seats are 6 feet apart for students, and that there's a 9-foot space for teachers. Cleaning will be done between class changes. So not when students stay in the same classroom, but when the classroom changes, we'll wipe those desks down. And classrooms will be aired out between classes when we all go outside to get an air break as well. Hallways are going to be set up going in a one-way direction. Bathrooms and other high-touch areas will be cleaned every 2 hours. So that's banisters and door handles and things like that. And the sharing and touching of material items and objects will be minimal. So students will carry their belongings with them. This is going to be the year of the backpack and the year of the coat. They won't be using lockers, and the library won't be open for browsing or touching of books. But our librarians will be getting materials and definitely looking to digital materials and getting those to students and faculty. Small appliances like water bubblers and microwaves won't be in use, though the water bottle fillers will be. And large communal spaces will have other uses. We won't be gathering huge groups of people together. We'll also have lunch in classrooms and in offices, with celebrations providing that lunch to those who want to order it delivered to those locations. So another step we're taking is that we're balancing our desire to have a student or a faculty member have fewer contacts with different people by trying to look at limiting cohorts. So in the middle school, students will be most likely in one, 2, or 3 cohorts through most of their day. The teachers will switch and come to them. And then they'll do other activities that will switch them out of that cohort, but we can really limit their contact pretty well. In the upper school, we tried to do that, and what we found pretty quickly is it had a really significant impact on the academic choices that they could make. So it for example, pitted advanced topic English potentially against advanced topics calculus, and that was definitely problematic. So we've chosen to keep 4 blocks every day and a 2-day alternating schedule. So therefore masking and other kinds of health precautions are so important in upper school. On the buses, the students will be pre-screened, as we talked about. They're going to be wearing masks. They will be distanced as they can. However, we know that 6-foot distance on buses is not really possible in all cases. Certainly as kids walk down an aisle by other students. And we also know that the ventilation on buses is not going to be at the standard that the classroom ventilation will be at. So if a student or a bus driver comes down with COVID, all the people who rode that bus will be quarantined. So that is something to consider if you would like to reconsider your bus plan as a family and would rather drive to and from. Just contact the business office to change that. Hopefully that won't happen though. So one question that has recurred from parents is, what happens if a child gets sick at school? Well, we will have a tracing and quarantine plan in place. First, we are required to call the health department, and they will come in and do the tracing. And that's why we're trying to keep students in trackable groups, so that if there's a need to trace, we can assist the health department in doing so. Our nurse, Ms. LeClaire, is going to have rooms to separate anyone who has symptoms until they can leave campus and go to see the doctor and get tested. And if a student or an adult is positive, then those who were within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more over 48 hours are also going to be required to quarantine and get tested. So we'll be working on that. But hopefully, as we build this culture of caring, our health guidelines will really keep us safe, they'll keep our families safe, and they'll keep our school open. So we will think it's very, very important for students to follow those guidelines. And so while Derryfield has always been a very understanding school and kind school, we're going to be really vigilant about following these guidelines. And a parent wrote and asked, how will we get student buy-in for these rules? And so first I'll talk about that. In the first few weeks of August, at some point, the student council and the disciplinary committee and the middle school council are going to be meeting with Dean Stimson, and they're going to look at those guidelines and create communications, probably videos and signs for other students. We're also going to, as we start school, our leaders in each division, 8th graders in the middle school, 12th graders in the upper school, will be the first on campus. So we're going to practice and learn our patterns and our movement and our how we're going to, our procedures with those students, and constantly ask for their advice and feedback, and hopefully build them to be the leaders and the role models for as the younger students enter the school. And I will be personally asking student leaders for help as well. And any student who doesn't feel that they can wear a mask will be invited to be in the virtual program. So that will be pretty clear. Great, so I'm so delighted, and I realized I've just assumed that everybody's been with us for all of our Fireside Chats and our Thursday Night Live college sessions. So I forgot to introduce Lindley Shutz, the assistant head for academics, and Brennan Barnard, our college counselor, who are with us tonight. So thanks so much for being here, and I'm gonna turn it over to Lindley.
Thanks for that nice introduction. As we all know, good learning happens when students feel safe and connected. And all of the steps that Mary just described are going to set the stage for the kind of joyful and meaningful learning and connections that our Derryfield students rely on. What I'm going to do over the next half hour or so is talk a little bit about schedule, talk about changes to calendar, and then begin to give you a sense of what the learning and teaching is going to look like within the classroom. And then we'll end with a brief piece by Brennan, and then we'll open up to your good questions. So I'm going to start with schedule. As Mary said, we spent some time in late June and July trying to figure out if we could create cohorts in the upper school that resembled cohorts in the middle school. And because we were able to assure the community that we would be able to provide the highest of safety standards in other ways, we're really delighted that this is going to allow us to continue with the schedule that we developed this last year. So the schedule that students will walk into this fall is going to feel very familiar. We are going to be continuing with an odd day and an even day. And in each of those days, students will have 4 academic blocks. Each of the academic blocks will be an hour. And between classes, students will have slightly extended breaks and as well as an extended lunch. Those breaks and that extended lunchtime are going to be really important in a number of ways. One is that they're going to give all of us an opportunity to step outside and get some fresh air, and when appropriate to have a mask break. It will give students a chance to kind of get some of the wiggles out, to get outside and socialize and see people who they wouldn't see otherwise. It will also give them a chance, the teachers a chance, to do that good sanitation protocol that Mary was describing, so that as the next group of students comes into a classroom, the classroom is ready for them. This will also give students time to take that important bio break, visit the restroom, refill their water bottle, and also to move through the school safely, distant, so that as they move to their next class, they're following the health protocols. Something that will feel different to students is that instead of having a mid-morning community block, we'll be moving our community activities into the every other day 8th block. So what students have known as the lead and exploration block will now be considered the community block. And that community block is going to play a really important role. Students will continue to have their lead classes during that time. We'll continue to meet for community meetings. We'll continue to have advisory during that time. And we will also hope to offer a number of extracurricular activities. Sadly, this year we will not be doing explorations, but our faculty will have a chance to work with student leaders to creatively design some activities that students will be able to enjoy during the breaks that I mentioned that will occur between academic blocks, and then also during that extended lunchtime. In addition, in the lead classes, we'll be offering that critically important social emotional learning that we know is going to be even more important during this new and strange time that we're all experiencing. And the lead classes will also give us a chance to cultivate that understanding about what it means to lead for the common good by continuing to cultivate cultural competencies and understandings about social justice and racial justice. We already do that kind of work in many of our extracurricular and curricular experiences, particularly in the humanities, but the lead classes will be another opportunity for students to engage in that important understanding of culture and their place in it. As I describe the schedule, I hope that for those of you who might be imagining learning from home this year, that you can begin to understand how you would experience that schedule too. It will feel so familiar to those of you who did our virtual learning experience with us this spring. Classes, again, will be an hour long instead of the 45 minutes that we had in the spring. But that was a request from students and teachers that classes be slightly longer so that we have a chance to build those important academic foundations that we know are so important at the beginning of the year. The other thing that will feel familiar to students who are learning from home is we'll have those built-in breaks so that you have a chance to have a little break from screen time. And as a very important request was people wanted lunch to be later and longer. So the lunch break will now also be later and longer. So if you've been in a morning of virtual learning, you can take some time to step outside and connect with a friend or parent and have a good lunchtime. So I'm now going to pivot to talk about the calendar. There are two important changes that we're making to the calendar this year. The first will take place in August. Many families have reached out to say, how can we best prepare for that transition back into school? And how can we manage our travel plans so that we can connect with family and friends before we come back to school? Currently, the travel guidelines in New Hampshire suggest a quarantine for 2 weeks if you travel outside of New England or if you use public transportation. So we would invite you to plan ahead to build in that time to quarantine if in fact you're going to be traveling out of New England or using public transportation. Some have asked if they could come closer to the deadline but do a test just to make sure that students are free of illness. And what we're finding is that the test results can be a little slow in coming back and sometimes don't reflect necessarily a steady state of symptoms. So if possible, we would really ask that you try to build in that quarantine time if you need to be out of state during the month of August. The other important change to calendar will occur in the winter term, and we're calling this the family phase. This change came about because of the number of families who reached out to let us know that they are so hoping to be able to connect with family and loved ones over Thanksgiving or the winter holidays. I think many of us experienced so many of the rapid changes this summer, and we had to put on pause our efforts for families to come join us or for us to join our families. And so we began to realize how important it would be to make that opportunity possible during these important holiday times, but also maintain that high sense of safety that we have put into place this fall. So what is going to happen is that from Thanksgiving until early January, the campus will be closed. And during that time, learning will go virtual. So from Thanksgiving until just around the Martin Luther King holiday, we will be teaching and learning virtually. That takes us just up to the midterm. So students will experience the first 5 weeks of the winter term at home, and then they'll come back onto campus after the midterm and enjoy being back together during that time. I know this is a lot of information, so I just want to remind you all to please post your questions. I can see some showing up in the chat, but please question away and we'll attend to them because this is a lot of detail. The other reason that we're so committed to trying to provide this family time over the winter holiday is that, as Mary was explaining, our public events such as Grandparents' Day and Back to School Night, which have often been an important connection time for family with the school, will all be happening virtually this year. So we hope that grandparents and others will chime in virtually during those times. And then when you get to see each other over the holidays, you can take that fun work that you've been doing or your shared stories and share a little bit of Derryfield face-to-face. I'm now going to pivot to teaching and learning, which I can't wait to tell you about. I wanted to give you a sense of what will the classroom feel like in this new model. We've all been hearing so much in the news about how the face of education is going to change in this new model. And one of the things that makes me feel so proud to be a part of Derryfield is that our teachers have really, in many ways, been preparing for this moment for years. And so while this might feel different in different ways, their preparedness to teach in this new model is just excellent, as it always is. So what will this look like? As you know, some students will be on campus, some students will be learning from home. On campus, in order to maintain the 6-foot distancing and our guidelines, some students will be in a classroom that I'll call the base camp, and other students who are in that shared course will be in a room that we'll call the satellite room. Teachers will float between those rooms. So whether you're in a satellite room or a base camp room, you'll be working synchronously or at times asynchronously with your teacher. But no matter which location you're in, you'll be working in concert with your class to advance your learning. As I was explaining, our teachers have been really anticipating this kind of move for a time, not only in the spring. And over the summer, they began to prepare really thoughtfully through a number of professional development experiences. Some of our teachers joined the Malone workshops. We are part of the Malone Online Consortium, and Malone is one of the leaders in the field of online learning. Malone is particularly excellent at helping teachers understand how to best leverage asynchronous activities. Asynchronous activities are the kinds of things that students can do more independently, as well as synchronous activities, which is that moment when teachers are often doing direct instruction or students are doing live debate or a lab together. And so those are moments where they're teaching in concert. Teachers also participated in the OESIS program. And OESIS is a known leader in the field of what some call blended or high flex learning. They are particularly excellent at helping teachers understand how to leverage tech tools to enhance learning in really transformative ways. So building on those experiences from the summer, our teachers are already reporting with such excitement the number of tools and activities that they're planning for the fall. They're also reflecting on the many ways that the preparation that we did over the last 3 years has really put them in a solid place for this fall. Over the last few years, our teachers have moved into a model called student-centered learning. And one way to understand student-centered learning is to really think about the ways that we know students learn best when they get to apply as they learn. And any of us who've been involved in a lab or a writing workshop or a theater production or any kind of teamwork where you're given a challenge and then you work towards that, solving that challenge together, have experienced what we mean by student-centered learning. Student-centered learning and performance-based assessments all lend themselves to this kind of hybrid model because they capitalize on the ways that students really thrive in working independently and on those teams. So all of this is a way of saying that while at times when we think about the ways that this experience is going to feel different, the spaces are going to feel different, some of the tools that we're going to be using are going to feel different, there are also ways that this is going to feel highly familiar and, as we know, really advanced learning in a way that our teachers have already been moving to. Some parents have also asked what kinds of tech gadgets are going to be in the rooms to make this remote learning not feel remote. So over the summer, our tech team has been working really hard to provide each classroom with a fantastic set of tech tools. Classrooms will have additional cameras. They'll also have additional microphones, and they'll have additional screens. And what this is going to allow us to do is that, for example, if you're a student learning from home, you'll see your teacher, and whether your teacher's up at the board or your teacher is demonstrating something in a lab, you'll see your teacher at work, while simultaneously also being able to see your classmates who are engaged in that activity. You'll also have on your screen the capacity to screen share, just as we've been doing this spring, meaning that a teacher can present any material that's important and students can also present. And then finally, as we're all getting so familiar with the Brady's Bunch squares, students will also see the faces of those who are learning from home. So one of the things that a student said to me recently is he said, you know, the amazing thing about all of these, about what we're doing virtually, is that you've got all of those friendly faces right there, and everything feels like it's right at your fingertips. So that is going to be an ongoing benefit. A parent also asked recently, what will it feel like if a teacher needs to teach from home? So just over the last few months, or the last few weeks, we've been reaching out to hire a number of teaching assistants. And as Mary was explaining, our parents have been incredibly generous, and our donors through the Thinking Forward campaign, to help us be able to hire these teaching assistants who will provide a support in a number of ways. They'll be there to have a teaching presence for teachers who are working remote. They'll also be there to provide supervision in some of the satellite spaces, and they'll also be available to work one-on-one with students who are either on campus, or particularly for those students who are international and wake up earlier than the rest of us. Those tutors will help us by providing some one-on-one time with those international students. All of these changes can at times feel daunting or new, but they also are invigorating. And I also am moving into them with such a great sense of confidence in our faculty, because at the heart of all of this is our faculty's incredible passion for their subjects, and their deep love and respect for our students, and their deep commitment to having strong relationships with our students. So although the tools might look different, and we'll all be running around looking like masked superheroes, and we'll be doing all of these things, at the heart of all of this is the kind of joyful and meaningful learning that we know is so critical to Derryfield. So at this point, I'm going to pivot to some questions and answers. And Brennan, we have some, I think we have a question for you right at the beginning. So if you want to unmute and join us, that'd be terrific.
Yes, hi.
Hi. So a parent reached out to ask, what are the ways that we're going to continue to support students in their college process?
Yeah, sure. We're going to be doing all of the same things we've always done, working one-on-one with students and families, and in some ways will be even more accessible, I think, because of some of the technology for parents in ways that we haven't typically been able to do, just because people's schedules and things like that. We'll be working one-on-one. I mean, I've been on calls and in meetings with college admission leaders pretty much every day this summer as things pivot for them, and really tracking what's been going on for them, and how they are switching and pivoting their admission processes, and how they assess students and how they look for students. I'll actually put in the chat a statement that recently came out from over 350 admission leaders from all of the schools that will probably ring a bell for folks. And basically what they're saying, admission leaders are saying, is we get it. You know, we understand this really challenging time and the context that everybody's living in. And we're going to be compassionate. And we're going to approach this with grace. And the short answer is don't worry. We have you covered. I'll be doing a number of webinars in August for underclass students and parents, some focus just on rising seniors, just really answering questions. But there's tons of questions out there about standardized testing. Does optional really mean optional? And yes, it does. And I think what the take-home message is, Derryfield students are really fortunate. Really fortunate because just what you were just saying, Lindley, about faculty members and the investment in students. And without testing and without some of these things, I think colleges are really going to turn to recommendations and to how well known students are, and that's going to really shine, as it always has, but even more this year. I can talk a little as we get into it if there are questions about activities and things like that, but colleges, again, are understanding that students might not be able to do sports, they might not be able to do certain activities, and they're not expecting them to jump through hoops. There are tons of opportunities that exist right now to be in service to others. I mean, that's, this is a thing that really makes a difference to colleges. So there are ways that students can reach out this summer, they can reach out in the fall, volunteering, doing tutoring online for folks, partnering with nursing homes and playing an instrument for residents, and all kinds of different volunteer opportunities that exist, just even in your immediate community. And so I think really taking advantage of those, and taking advantage, even though some things have been canceled. I was talking to the Dean of Admission from Dartmouth the other day, and they were talking about students who, had planned to kind of volunteer at hospitals this summer and do internships at hospitals and things like that, and that lost opportunity. And he was really saying, it doesn't matter that you don't have the opportunity to do it. It's the intent and it's the why behind the reason you were doing it. So we're going to be working with students to really tell their story about kind of identifying why they're excited about things, and how to kind of dive into that in different ways than they normally would. So I'll leave it at that, because I know there are lots of questions about the nitty gritty, but I'm here, I'm around all summer, so I'll be doing these webinars, and please reach out to me.
That's great. Thank you so much. Mary, I'm wondering, how as a parent can I best support the school and my student as we head into this interesting year?
Well, definitely parent volunteerism is going to look different this year, because we really are going to be seeing our parents dropping students off and picking them up, but the other kinds of experiences that would have been volunteer will be virtual. And so, certainly you'd mentioned the Derryfield Forward Fund, Lindley, and we have a lot of new expenses, from the huge investment in classroom technology to the teaching assistants to additional cleaning people to be hired, lots of them. So anyone who can even give a nominal amount, it helps with foundations and matching gifts. That would be really helpful. And then we'll get back to you on how the PFA might be operating in these new times, where our events are largely virtual. So we'll be back. That will be to be determined as we go forward. Lindley, tell us about, one of the things that I used to think about when my kids were Derryfield school age was what should I be looking for to prepare them for the fall in terms of like backpacks or gear or whatever. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
I sure will. And some of you might know my husband, Christopher's dad, is an ER doctor. So he is already all fired up to help us get ready to go back to school. As he said, we are usually ordering last minute from Follett, our book order. Now we're going to be ahead of the game and ordering all those things we need to put together our own personal PPE package. So here's what the Lynch family is going to be packing into Christopher's backpack as he heads back to school. We're going to have a number of hand sanitizers. We're going to have wipes that he could use as needed as he climbs back in the car, or if he pulls out a snack and he wants to wipe something down. We're going to look forward to receiving from Derryfield a mask that he can use. We'll also send along with him in his backpack a number of disposable masks as backup, just in case he misplaces it. Something that I sort of was late to the game in understanding is that he's also going to want some kind of container so that when he steps outside for that fresh air break, or when he takes off his mask to eat lunch, he has a nice clean place to put his mask into so that he's not setting it down on the desk, but he'll have a place to hold it until he needs to put it back on again. We'll also include a water bottle so that he can walk up to the, Mary, did you call it a bubbler? I'm from the Midwest. I call it a fountain. It's a fountain. He can walk up to the fountain and refill. And then he will also have, well, because he gets hungry midday, he'll also have a number of snacks that he can pull out as needed. But I'm curious, I think too, people have been asking a lot about what kind of masks. And we will be, Derryfield will be requiring that students wear the 3-ply masks. We'll be providing a mask that students can also purchase that has the Derryfield logo on it that will meet the standard. And we're requiring that because it meets the recommendations of our public health experts. And we'll be sharing a link with everyone to help them fulfill that supply that we might be needing. So Mary, I'm just looking through the chat and I'm seeing lots of questions about sports.
Of course. Yeah.
I know that this has been an ever-changing state of affairs. What do we know at this point?
So we will know more, and our next Fireside chat will be July 30th, and hopefully we'll have even more information about sports and lots of other topics. And we certainly know how missed athletics were in the spring. And as the mom of 3 athletes, we definitely all felt it. Once again, Derryfield is very fortunate in that we can run on campus after school sports, and that's what we're planning to do, certainly at the level of skills and drills, fitness, scrimmaging against one's Derryfield teammates. We are planning for sure to be doing that. And actually, for the first time this year, 6th graders get to play on our middle school sports teams, which is something that my children all wanted. So I'm so glad that that's now the case. And it'll be a wonderful time for them to meet kids who are not in their cohorts as well. The athletic requirement will have greater flexibility this year so that students will have the option to exercise individually at home and log their workout time and have that overseen and signed off by a parent. So moving to interscholastic sports, the idea of playing kids at other schools, we don't know the answer to that yet. And here's why. We are we're an independent school or a private school that's part of a New Hampshire Public School League. In talking to my friends who are principals in public schools, very few of our public schools that we would play, or actually any schools at all, have really announced and finalized even how they're going to open open their campuses for regular school. They're trying to figure out, are they virtual? Are they a hybrid between virtual and on campus? How many kids are on campus? How many buses do they need? And so, we need to know if our competitors will be fielding sports teams to even have that conversation. Independent school leagues have generally not announced yet. And in large part, that's because many of them go across state lines for lots of their games. And so they don't even know if they're going to be playing in the fall. The Ivy League, the Patriot League, NESCAC schools, all those colleges have announced that they will not be having fall sports seasons. So the answer is right now, we don't know. And we will be, as information becomes available, we're still going to be evaluating the choices and the options, keeping in mind our standards for safety and health. So it it isn't an automatic that just because other schools are doing something, we will be doing it. And conversely, there may be very few schools able to have interscholastics and sports, and perhaps we will be one of them. So stay tuned on that. Lindley, I want to ask you, can you talk a little bit about performances and public events and what that might be like?
Yes, absolutely. So we're so lucky because with our space and with our protocols, there are really going to be very few changes to program. Where we are sad to see a change in program is that our health team has come back to recommend that for just this year, we pause in the parts of the program that would include singing or wind instruments. So that means that for this academic year, just this 1 year, we will be putting chorus and wind instrument participation in instrumental ensemble on hold. Over the next week, we'll be reaching out to families whose students participate in those events to help families connect with other arts experiences and other kinds of extracurricular experiences that this will give their students a chance to explore. In terms of other kinds of public gatherings, we're not going to be able to gather as an audience to watch in-person performances. But just as we did this spring, our groups, our upper school play, our middle school music, our middle school play will be performed. It will just be done virtually. So our creative arts team has been so incredibly resilient and flexible about finding ways for students to enjoy those kinds of performances. They'll just be virtual instead of in person. Interestingly, because of the timing, we are going to be able to offer joyfully a graduation ceremony on August 1st. Because of our ability to hold the event outside and because we have the remarkable space of the turf field and can therefore provide safe distancing, we will be gathering to celebrate this amazingly important moment in the lives of our graduates. Other events such as back to school night or Grandparents' Day or other kinds of public events that we so often hold will also now be virtual. So one of the things that we discovered this spring is that for many families, because of their work schedule or because of end of day activities, being able to participate virtually actually led to higher attendance. So we're looking forward to seeing that continued attendance as we move through the year. So I think I'm beginning to notice that there are two strands of questions coming in, one in the Q&A thread and one in the chat thread. So I will focus on the chat thread. If I could ask, Brennan, would you mind pulling up the Q&A thread and we can sort of tag team so that we make sure we can address the questions? As Mary was explaining earlier, our goal tonight was really to help inform you about safety standards and to give you sort of that larger view about what we're going to be accomplishing in the classroom and in the schedule and in program. Some of these questions are at that next level of detail that we'll plan on addressing in our next Fireside chat. So please know that if we don't get to it tonight, it's because we know that it will be a better answered question in just a couple of weeks when we meet again.
And just adding on that, we're in the letter that goes out on Monday. We'll put in that letter answers to scheduling questions. So we won't field those now, but we'll put those calendar questions answered there. And then just remember nuts and bolts, read that online newsletter. Great. So Lindley, do you want to pick the first one?
Sure.
So, Lindley, one of the questions is just, the ability for students to go back and forth between in-person and virtual, or even if, it's not COVID related and they have a stomachache and they're staying home, can they be in virtual?
Yeah, as Mary was explaining, I mean, the most important thing is if someone doesn't feel well, stay home. There's nothing is going to be lost by choosing to take that safer step. and choosing to learn from home. So the first thing we would want you to do is we want you to get sleep and do what you need to do so that you feel better. And then when you do feel up to participating, as we know from the spring, our virtual instruction was just so solid. So no one's going to lose anything by choosing to stay home. Some families have asked about recording. Teachers will be recording steadily. So not every moment of every class will be recorded, but critical moments of instruction or engagement or group participation will be, and those recordings will be posted to a specific classroom plan that teachers will be sharing with students daily. And if for some reason a recording isn't done, that will also be noted. So students know where to find the recording, and but they'll also know if they don't need to look for a recording, because they can do what is needed without it. And then in terms of commitment, as Mary was explaining, with the letter in this next week, we'll be including a survey that will be so important that all of you respond to let us know what your intention is for the fall. As much as possible, if you can indicate to us your plan, we'd be asking you to commit to that plan for the term. And here's why. As you can imagine, managing the number of spaces and kinds of learning experiences that students will be having is complex. Our teachers are prepared for it, but it is complex. And so we feel very confident that a student's continuity of learning will be stronger if they stay consistent, so the teacher knows how to anticipate where they'll be in their learning experience and can attend to that consistently for them. So if you can indicate to us what your expectation is for the term, we would really appreciate it.
Lindley, one of the questions which was a great one, was about the satellite spaces. And I wonder, earlier today at the faculty meeting, you described kind of what you might imagine seeing in a class and how that might look. I wonder if you could paint a picture for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just recently, I got to spend a part of a day on campus to see the new setup in the new spaces. And first of all, some of the classrooms have really been renovated to make them larger so that we can have more students in the room. But the satellite spaces are going to be really well equipped. And so, for example, we just are setting up 3 satellite spaces in the library space. And what that means is that, for example, I can imagine that Dr. Gaucher would be in his history room leading a lively debate. And either in the library space, which is nearby, or in another satellite space, which is nearby, another part of his class might be in that satellite space, either preparing for that debate that they'll participate in with Dr. Gaucher the next day, or they too could actually be joining the debate synchronously and either be a part of that debate team or commenting on the debate in what we might call sort of a fishbowl, where students watch other students perform something and give them feedback on it. I could imagine, for example, in a middle school math class, Mimi Coombs might be in what I'll call the base camp room, leading students by having them go up to the wall, and she gives them a challenge set, problem set, and they're up on the wall, as they often do, as a team, solving that problem together. And their team partners would be in the Macinich room, dialed into that space virtually. And so they're helping their teammates solve the problem on the wall by giving them their input virtually. Mm-hmm. So the satellite spaces would be a space where students would not only join synchronously, what I just described, they're in live real time with their other classmates, but also it would be a place where students might be doing something asynchronously. So for example, there might be a team of students doing research for a lab that other students are doing live in the class, in the base camp classroom at that point.
And students will alternate, take turns being in the different spaces.
Yes, thank you for saying that. And teachers will also float between spaces.
And then we've got the virtual students as well, kind of coming on in. So it's going to be really, it's going to be feel really 21st century, everybody. Let's see, what's another question we should take? Brennan?
So 2 of the kind of themes I'm seeing, one is a question about what's going to happen with retreats at the beginning of the year. And the second is just some questions about lunch and eating, and will students, when they're eating, will they be unmasked, and if they're in a classroom, how that will work, and can they be with their friends, etc.
Yeah.
Why don't I jump into retreats, and Mary, you could take lunch.
Sure.
So the retreat question is such an important one. We all know what it feels like to be new. And we all know how important it is to have that moment, whether you're going to be virtual for the fall or whether you're going to be on campus for the fall. Those retreats play such an important role in helping everyone connect right from the beginning. So our retreat teams run by our head class advisors are now meeting to design a number of options for us so that students will have the opportunity to participate in the retreat, whether it's virtual or in person.
Okay, my neighbor's tractor just fired up, so I'll talk loudly. And it also looks like a storm is coming. So if I suddenly, if I blow away, everyone knows what happened. So in terms of lunch, basically, we're still working on that. What we are trying to do, though, is to limit the number of kind of contacts with other people and keep kids in cohorts. So you'd have lunch with the teacher before who you were just in class with, or who you're in class with afterward. When we go outside, that's the chance to socialize with a number of kids. I think I might go indoors now, or let Lindley answer.
Well, and we're getting close to 8 o'clock here, and one of the questions is just kind of who do people contact with questions around policies and procedures that kind of surface because of this chat, and where do we go from here type thing.
So there's a great question of this is so many details. We're planning on creating a document that's a compendium of all the kinds of decisions that we've been talking about and protocols. So not to worry about taking notes and capturing them all. We also want to keep taking your questions, and also you help us make sure that we're looking into things and making sure to figure out answers to those questions, because basically everything has to be reinvented this year. So when you get nuts and bolts, and if you reply to nuts and bolts, that actually goes right to my assistant, Dana Laviano, and we'll take that. We'll take your comments and questions that way.
Great, thank you. I think we have addressed a good number of the themes that seem to be in the threads. And so at this point, I think we can scoop up all of these questions and give them to our problem-solving teams and report back out to you in the ways that Mary has just described.
So just so that I don't besmirch my neighbor, I would like on the record for you to know that that's my husband who fired up the tractor during the program. But I just want to end by saying, things will be definitely odd and different and new in so many different ways. And, but I think it's going to be wonderful. And I believe that it's going to be wonderful because of the delight we have in just seeing each other on Zoom. I think the chance to be on campus and actually be with each other and see each other and do those things will be tremendous, especially because we've all been in this life where we are really seeing very few people beyond our close family. So that feeling when you bump into a friend in the grocery store or something, it's just so exciting, or you have a friend over on the deck 6 feet away. And afterward you feel like, oh my gosh, that was exhausting. Like, I'm not used to seeing people. It was so much excitement. So I think that I cannot wait for that. And I think we all will be just so delighted to be back.
As evidenced by the fact that Mary can't even tell the difference between her neighbor and her husband.
Oh. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll keep providing you the plan as we know it.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Bye. Bye. Bye.